Dear President Perez, dear colleagues, dear Ambassador Rice, dear friends, let me start by stating that I am an optimist. I don't look for or find solace in complaining about the poor state of affairs or blaming the world for the many difficulties I may find in front of me. I believe the task, actually the duty of a leader, is to take decisions that are conducive to action, not to find comfort in indecision. Doing nothing may be a good option once in a while, but on purpose. Doing nothing as an established policy can only be harbinger of disaster. To me, there are three ingredients that are basic when exercising power properly, when exercising leadership. The first is to have a clear vision of what you want. Without it, you are missing the compass, and your navigation may suffer from many distractions. With a clear objective in mind, one is less of a prisoner of public opinion polls or dominant winds of the day. I am afraid today many political leaders are more responsible to approval rates than to their own commitments. In my view, today's world requires strong leaders that take on responsibilities and face decisions with firmness. Not light leaders, not soft leaders, no decaffeinated leaders, if you prefer. The second vital element is the team surrounding the leader. The world is too complex to face it alone from pharaonic position. You need smart people around you to help in taking the right decisions. And the third ingredient of a purposeful leadership is to define and implement the right policies. For a single question, good policies tend to produce good results, and bad policies produce always. This country has encountered challenge after challenge since its inception 61 years ago, and always its people, its leadership were able to find a way to overcome all difficulties. I hope, actually, I'm confident that the current leadership and the Israeli people will find its way to overcome all difficulties and to prevail as in the past. Take, for instance, the economy. I have been visiting Israel regularly in the last years, and I can only be astonished by the progress accomplished. Privatizations and liberalizations have really paid off, so much that the current world economic crisis has hit Israel as everyone else. But this country was probably better prepared to absorb its shock than many others, including my own country. Nevertheless, a word of caution. Governments have a decisive role in how to face and overcome the current crisis. It is easy to resort to financial generosity, increase public spending, more deficit, and so on. But, in my opinion, it will be a mistake to apply as a recipe to solve the crisis the very factors that were behind the origin of current crisis. I know that public pressures is sometimes unbearable, but as I said before, the duty of the real leader is to define policies that help the nation not only in the short term, but also in the medium and long term. I believe in order to leave crisis, what is needed is less taxes, no more taxes. It's tight control over public spending, no control whatsoever. It's less deficit, no more deficit. It's more labor flexibility, no more rigid labor markets. It's more free market, no more protectionism. It's more freedom, it's more free trade, no more interventionism. And I believe that you are walking in the right direction, even though some of the short-term social ramifications may be perceived too costly or too bitter to swallow. But let's take another realm, security. This is a different country to the one I found a couple of years ago, in the aftermath of the painful experience of fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon. Thanks to the efforts of the Israeli Defense Forces, the deterrent capabilities of Israel have been strengthened, and Israel's enemies are aware of it. Let's look to Iran. I think we all agree that a nuclear Iran may pose an existential threat to Israel. No doubt about that. We may also agree that up to now, the combination of sanctions and engagement has not produced the desired result, and as a consequence, Tehran may be closer to the bomb than before. But it would be foolish to be blind also to the new elements that have entered the sense since the election of June 12 and the crackdown that followed. On the one hand, the leaders of Iran have shown to the world their very own nature, as well as the lack of domestic legitimacy they are suffering. On the other hand, the regime has also some important cracks within its ranks, opening up options for change that were not thought months ago. This is important because if we, I mean the so-called international community, resist the temptation to rush to embrace Ahmadinejad in exchange for endless conversations about the status of his nuclear program, we may be a contributing force in moving Iran to a new direction. I do believe it is our moral obligation, not just our strategic interest, to do so. And let me conclude with one more observation. Bearing in mind the history of Israel, I may understand perfectly how lonely you may have felt in many instances. And I understand perfectly well that the dynamics set in motion by the recent Goldstone report may leave you wondering who are your real friends and enemies. I also understand why, in so many occasions, Israel prefers to go alone instead of putting its security concerns in the hands of many ineffective bodies. But the world is becoming increasingly complex to manage, and what served in the past may be outdated today. I do believe Israel should do more in reaching out to its friends, which, believe it or not, are quite a few. Today's world is not the Cold War order we were used to. It may not even be the post-9/11 world we have been through during the last years. But one thing is sure: Israel is and will remain the epicenter where the major strategic forces that will shape our future collide. Despite all difficulties and temporary setbacks, Israel must engage fiercely the world. Would not be nice, as an example, that the NATO major strategic revision will conclude a definition of war close to what you have been experiencing here in your soil and your flesh? The world has to come to terms with reality, leaving behind the virtual and inexisting world we believe we are in. The sooner, the better. And I do believe we, in Europe and also in America, have a lot to learn from Israel. So, in summary, you have the leadership you need. There are opportunities to take advantage of previously unforeseen, and you have friends out there that are willing to make the case of Israel, as I am and always be. Thank you very much.